Hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody. It's me, your host, Calvin Logan, the Logan Power Show, nationwide, worldwide. Hey, I thank y'all for watching us. I thank you for y'all for tuning in what we're about to do here in the Logan Power Show. We are excited about what's going on here in this part of time. We are making a difference. We're interviewing as many people as possible. I told you my goal here in 2020 is to put the right people in front of us. People who want to run, tell us why they're running, why they want to make a difference, and I want to make a difference too. Well, this is a young lady. She is very excited about what she's doing. It's her first time here. She's the Democratic nominee for District 7. So the one and only Ms. Melissa Watson. How you doing, ma'am?
How are you, Calvin?
Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we wanted just to talk about yourself, District 7. For those that may not know how big of what responsibility will come into place if given that opportunity. For District 7, what is your range? If you were given that opportunity, who would you be responsible for?
So District 7 covers Dillon, Marlboro, Florence, Terrell, Darlington, Horry, Georgetown, Marion. Those are and Chesterfield. I might have said somebody twice, but we have 8 counties. So most of Florence County and a lot of Darlington, because Florence, Darlington, and Terrell split. Terrell splits, I think, with District 5, and then my district, and then Darlington splits with Darlington and Florence split with District 6, which is the Honorable Clyburn. So, but we have a large portion of Darlington and Florence, and those are our counties. So it's a coastal area, goes up and meets the North Carolina border, and then it goes inland a little bit. But I like this district. It's my home district. I'm from Dillon, South Carolina, born, raised, and went to church in Marlboro. So I love the PD. So it doesn't seem that big to me, because I can get from one part of the district to the other in about 2.5 hours. You know, if you're going from Orby to Terrell, it's a little tricky though with traffic sometimes. But for the most part, it's very well traveled. It's easy to travel, and I like traveling it because it's home.
Absolutely, definitely being home. Since you are a native and you know what the need is, what do you want to see change? And the reason why I'm saying that, a lot of times when people say they're running, they say, "Oh, I'm the right fit. I'm the right person for the job," but they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Of like, do you know what this street is? Do you know what these people have been going through? Do you understand the heritage of what people understand what it's like to not have something, to have something? But I'm an actual a model citizen of what it's like to come out of something, and just knowing about yourself. What do you want to see change if given the opportunity? Your first 4 years in, what do you want to see accomplished?
Yeah, well, in the house I have, we're up every 2 years in the house. I just did my morning treatment, so I'm a little shiny there.
Okay.
But so I have 2 years, and then I'll have to run again. And I can tell you, it'll be all guns blaring if when I win in November, because people won't expect it, and then 2 years later. But I learned a lot. I'm learning a lot about my district. I mean, I grew up there. There's a lot that I went in that I thought I knew, right? But I've been listening to a lot of people, and so back in maybe when was it, February or March, I went to a festival in Conway.
Got it.
And now it was a Gullah Geechee Corridor festival.
Yes.
And I'm like, why is this in Conway? Like Georgetown? Yeah, I got it, right? Georgetown, rice plantations up along the coast. Get it. Got it, right? But why Conway? So I went to this festival, and it was because I love festivals, right? All before Corona. And I was amazed and floored at all the things that I had learned. Met a wonderful lady from New York. And so because it was a Gullah Geechee festival, she said, are you Gullah Geechee? I was like, I am not. And she was like, well, tell me about your area. So she was, even in that situation, I was able to talk about the African American slave experience being from the PD and the cotton and tobacco farms. But I want to run. Like I said, I'm always learning something new about the district all the time. But a lot has been reinforced, right? And a lot has changed in the last few years. I wouldn't say the last few years, but I would say the school systems. In the 90s, people talk about the Great Recession of 2008. And I always remind people, I'm from the PD. We had job recession and outsourcing in the 90s, where we lost a lot of plants went overseas. NAFTA, NAFTA had a devastating effect on the PD because those textile jobs went to Thailand and the Philippines, and the auto industry left and went to Mexico. Well, if you're from the PD, that Amana was in Florence, and my mom actually worked at that plant, and they shipped those jobs to Mexico. And that's when I really learned the importance of unions. I'm one of the few Democrats who advocate for unions in South Carolina, because I know firsthand what unions can do. Not only did I learn the value of unions in high school when my mom was losing her job, but it was reinforced when I got married. I married a union guy. We got married on my 23rd birthday. And the reason is because I was dropping off for my parents' insurance. And once we got married, he would pick me up on his. And I was dropping off at 23. Now we know, because of the Affordable Care Act, that you can carry your children until you're 26. So I married him because I loved him, not just for health insurance, although the health insurance was really, really good. But I did love him too. But, we wound up divorced, but we're still friends. We got 2 kids. But in the 90s, and I want to bring this forward, my mom lost the job. She was at Amana. And they started sending her work overseas. They built another plant in Mexico, and they started sending that work overseas. The ovens, they were building what was called a large oven. I don't buy Amana products to this day. So everybody now has a large oven.
Sure.
But Amana was the first to ever build this thing.
Sure.
And they were doing, the work was good. It was steady, all of that. And then all of a sudden, because the plant in Ohio, this is when I learned about the Midwest manufacturing. All of those plants in Ohio, the auto plants, the manufacturing plants, they were all unionized. And because they were unionized, their contract said that before any work went overseas, it had to come there first. That those union plants were the last to close, right? Because they had a contract. And so my mom's company in South Carolina, because we were right to work, lost their contract. They then started building washers and dryers that weren't selling. And the good work went to the north. And so Amana Corporation went out of business. It is now Otis. They use that building for Otis. And I never forgot that. I remember that. My mom wound up losing her home in foreclosure because she wasn't working, and she was loyal. And I told my mom she was always too loyal, but she was really loyal. And she stayed there until the plant closed. I mean, they cut her hours in half, furloughs, all of these things. And she stayed there, but she wasn't making enough to pay her bills. She had to subsidize with a part-time job because she always believed that work was coming back. And I was like, it's not coming back. And so that decimated property taxes, and we know other plants started closing, and the school system suffered.
Yes.
And so what we know now is the corridor of shame. It's not the fault of the people who lived in the area, it's the fault of the policies. And the policies of the area really decimated the communities. They lost jobs, so therefore they lost valuable income. They lost funding for schools. They lost, a lot of things that then allowed crime to come in, and so that's part of the reason I'm running, because teaching social studies, sociology for a few years, mostly government, you get to understand intimately the link between policy and people's lives. And so I decided enough was enough. And then we got this buffoon, I shouldn't have said that, in the White House.
Well, we want to say this. At the end of the day, we know we have people that are not, does not have everybody's best interest at heart, is
Yeah,
what we would say here. It's like
yeah.
this is what was chosen, not by
Hmm.
everybody, but this is who's in charge. And when
Right.
you say that there the tone is what I say. The tone, the verbiage, it's a lot of division. And
Hmm.
for America to
Hmm.
heal, it's going to require um, recalibration of the heart, is what I say. You need like a heart check, like really know what the heck is going on, and you gotta you
Hmm.
gotta you gotta know righteousness is righteousness. So for anybody
Right.
who's saying like how she feels, let's be honest. You said the same thing with the previous administration, the previous administration before. There's always somebody said something, was always something wrong with somebody previously. So she's
Yeah.
speaking her piece as saying like, hey, how she feels. They
Well,
are, as I say, as you feel, but you're saying things that are actually
right.
factual, because there are some
Right.
things that don't make sense.
Right.
There's a broken system.
Hmm.
The right to work here in South Carolina, that is one of the most controversial laws I have
Right.
ever heard in my life.
Right.
Have you ever considered, like, if you given the opportunity for you to fight to get that removed? Because you mentioned you're going for unions, and for those that say, you know, you don't need no unions, unions is crazy. All right, well, let's just get a big thinking cap on here. All right, you think Boeing just came from Washington down to South Carolina just to have a, coming to Jesus moment? No, they understood that if we take the core values of our heart of our business and bring it down to South Carolina, it's a right to work state. There's no unions. There's no union means I can decide if I want to keep you, I don't want to keep you. I can ship my stuff over here. I can do things there. Um, you think about Verizon Wireless when they brought the call centers from down from a certain, they brought it to South Carolina, and Verizon Wireless talked about doing unions, because what happened was, this is factual. Verizon had a breakage of their landline and their wireless side, where their
Hmm.
landline side was on a union, the
Hmm.
wireless side wasn't. If the wireless side was on a union, what that would have mean is that people, whatever they're getting paid per hour, whatever that was, you would have to even the playing field. Means that if I live in South Carolina, the actual livable wage has to be so that I can be able to survive. And if I live in New York, same thing is there. But you go ahead.
Okay, so like when you're in church and the preacher get to preaching real good, you know what I mean? And you get to going and you just get to moving, you know what I mean? You just can't be still, you know what I mean? And you just run it. I don't shout, right? Because I have no rhythm, right? But you just get to woo, So that's how I'm feeling right now, right? Listen, I teach. And this is a true story. I see this kid. He's not a kid anymore. Like, I'm old. I gotta keep remembering. I taught kids who are now in their 30s, but I had this student, and I love this kid. So I have 3 students who work for unions right now. Well, four, because a friend of mine called me and told me they signed up another one of my students. Now, this kid was the first, though. And so he was sitting in my world history class. Global Studies 2 is what we probably call it, but he didn't like school. I mean, just to be honest. But I was okay with that. Some kid, but he wanted to work. So he told me, he said, Ms. Watson, I got a job at UPS. And I was like, okay. He was part-time. So I said, now, you don't really like school. You don't really want to go to college. He was like, no, I don't want to do that. I said, so keep this job at UPS. It's a part-time job. Blah, blah. He was from a pretty well middle class family. They did well, blah, blah, blah. But he wasn't going to college. Okay, no big deal. So I said, keep this job. Let me tell you now, because at the time I was still married. I said, my ex worked there. We got good insurance, right? Good insurance. You're going to have great benefits, blah, blah, blah. So just stay there and go full time. So he listened. He did. And so I saw him, his brother play basketball. I saw him a few years later. He said, Miss Watson, I'm full time. I was like, okay, good job, So this kid was 20, because he started when he was he was sophomore, I think, in high school, got a job part-time. So by the time he was 23 or 24, he was full-time making $95,000 a year.
Mm.
I didn't make $95,000 a year when I was 24 years old. Oh, let me think if I even make that right now at 43. It is the stretch, right?
It.
So, but he was excited. So then I saw him again. I said, "Now I want you to buy a house. You can stay with your mama," because we were staying with my mama. Was good. I mean, I still talk to mama. Mama is a good mama, right? She was cooking for him every day. I said, "Stay. You can stay with your mama, but just go buy the house because you're making a lot of money. You can write off the mortgage and then you can rent it and let somebody live in it." He did that. So last time he still delivers to the school. And I said, last time I saw him, I said, "You ever move in that house?" He said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Oh, because you got a girlfriend and you got married." But let me tell you what that did. It gave him a sense of manhood, right? Because he had an honest job. He was making a decent income, and he was able to take care of his business. So I have four students right now that I help get union jobs. And I talk about it all the time. If you're not going to college, here's some options for you, right? I have students working in, I think it's called HVAC, HVAC, HVAC is that
HVAC.
what it is?
Yep.
Okay, they do HVAC, right? Enjoy it, make good money. Some of them are union, some of them aren't. So I want to break right to work because the only people who like right to work are corporations, right? Listen, and I use the UPS example all the time. UPS is still a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they provide great health care through their Teamster union. So let me blow your mind with something else. If UPS can provide great insurance and their employees don't pay for it out of their paychecks and still make a profit, why can't other companies do it? And why can't the United States of America do it for everybody? Because we choose not to.
Gotcha.
And that's it. We're making a conscious choice not to. It doesn't have to be a $50 trillion plan like some people put out there. That's a lie, right? A country that has a budget of $4 trillion, but you're telling me something's going to cost $50 trillion? I don't even think the world economy puts out $50 trillion a year. So where are you coming up with these numbers? You're making them up to scare people is what you're doing. But if UPS can do it, and they're not the only ones, if GM could do it, and that's the thing. When Mitt Romney said, let them go bankrupt, the reason he wanted them to go bankrupt is so they could get out of their union contracts. That was it. Because they didn't want unions to be able to negotiate for people because it's not in the best interest for business. I am not going to be the candidate that puts profit over people, okay? Because I think you can have both. I think it's a false choice when we say union or right to work. You can have both. I've seen companies do it successfully if they choose to.
Yeah.
But what we got to stop doing is stop sacrificing our people for profit. We can't do that. And we're seeing it during this COVID stuff. I am a person who is pro-union because I know my life is better because of it. I have 2 kids. They still are covered by, when I divorced my ex, the only thing I asked for was him to carry him on their insurance. He'll tell you that story. That's all that matters. Because when I take them to a doctor's office, I don't have to worry about, am I going to be able to afford their medicine? I don't have to worry about, am I going to be able to afford the emergency room visit? And trust me, we are VIP in every emergency room we go to because we've been a lot, okay? And it's never a concern. I have a student who I have a medicine that costs $2,500, $4,000. He needed a specific antibiotic that costs $4,000. And of course, his parents couldn't afford that. So they had to come up with something else that kind of worked, but didn't really work. And that to me just breaks my heart because that's not something I have to deal with because my kids have a really good insurance plan.
Yep.
And insulin. you know, the House, Laura Underwood's bill passed to lower the cost of insulin, but that's real. Like people not being able to control their diabetes because they couldn't afford their insulin. The
Absolutely.
EpiPen, I remember I have to have EpiPens in my house. And when that went up to $600, right? It wasn't a concern because I had the insurance covered it, and my doctor gave me a coupon. And you know what he said? He said, I can't write it for EpiPen anymore. I have to write it for this because EpiPen is the brand name, and there's a generic now, and you can get this. But imagine having a kid that had a severe allergy and not being able to have $600 to pay for your EpiPen. You know, we're better than that in this country. And as a congresswoman, I'm going to make sure that I hold this country accountable to the Constitution of the United States. That's my goal, because we are better. And in the goals and the purposes of the Constitution of the United States, it says promote the general welfare. So you not provide welfare, but promote the general welfare of the people of the United States. That's a core value. It doesn't say promote corporations and profits. It says promote the general welfare of the people. So, I support unions. I do.
Got it. Absolutely. Now, for the people that this is always the rebuttal. You get them all the time.
Yeah.
Small,
Mm-hmm.
medium businesses say, like, if you got unions, then it's going to affect us and the bottom line. You hear that a lot. You hear
Mm-hmm.
like people say, like, the small and the medium business are the backbones of the United States. You hear that, like, by you making this universal health care will make our dollars more to be able to help us to survive, to keep our businesses going. How do
Mm-hmm.
you speak to those individuals that have an objection to what you're saying? And the reason
Mm-hmm.
why I'm saying that is that, I want to look at this not from uh,
Right.
a twofold situations. You always got the arguments. You hear it all the time. Well, man, if we got unions, if we got affordable health care, if we got all these things in place, we can't survive. Now,
Right.
the question I always ask people, you ain't surviving now with COVID-19, but like that's just the argument, that one here, because
Right.
if the, if
Right.
the if the government decides don't open up, then how are you gonna make money unless you are a online benefactor to where you are shipping your products? But most
Right.
of these small, medium businesses can't afford to actually do both. Either you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
be a online affiliate, or you're going to be a brick and mortar building to actually keep
Mm-hmm.
your business going. Because if the government says today or tomorrow, hey, we're shutting it down again because of COVID-19, because there's no vaccination, and there won't be no vaccination until next year if people just
Mm-hmm.
following the tracks of what's going on,
Right. Right.
how are these businesses can keep moving? So what do you argue? What do you respond to those individuals who combat what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's an issue. And then there's union membership. That's an issue. So organized labor. When you talk about organized labor, you're usually talking about organized labor for people who work for corporations, right? And why do you need those protections? Because like Donald Trump told a businessman in New York, my money is longer than yours. I can keep this tied up longer. And so therefore I can outweight you, right? So the little person, when it comes to corporations, really don't have a recourse of action because corporations outspend them. And so that is why collective bargaining is such a big deal and so powerful. Small businesses, let's be real, is you. Because I'm from a family of small business owners. They do restaurants, they do catering, all of that. So it's you, mama, daddy, cousin, so and so, and your brother. They're not going to form a union to fight you because it's a family business. So you're not in that discussion. These are people who work for Boeing and Amazon and GM and Toyota, the electricians unions, the plumbing unions, the bigger companies where I cannot effectively bargain or negotiate for myself. Okay, so that's a different issue. You're exempt, mom and pop, because that's why you're called a mom and pop, is you, papa, the son, so-and-so. The medium-sized businesses, you're probably going to be exempt too, right? But collective bargaining is something that employees should have. Collective bargaining, if you go back and check your history, is what kept us from becoming a communist nation. It's what kept us from having a communist takeover of Europe during the industrialization age, because the middle class grew. And Karl Marx was not expecting the middle class to grow. And why did they grow? Because they organized and advocated for workers' rights that we take for granted, such as labor laws for children, the 40-hour work week, vacation time, all those things that union employees get, sick time, vacation time, that the average worker does not, right?
Yep.
Now, universal health care. We need to, the Affordable Care Act, see, this is the thing. You have a spectrum here. What we don't have, no health care protections provided by the government. Affordable Care Act, which is in the middle, and then you have Medicare for all, right? So we're over here. We're not even protecting the Affordable Care Act. Now, when Obama tried to create the exchanges and tried to expand Medicaid, that was so small companies could negotiate for better health care for coverage for their employees. But we didn't like it because it was Obamacare, right? So we advocate against it. And just this week, Trump tried to, once again, nix Obamacare in the middle of a pandemic and take health insurance from millions of Americans who would have no recourse or way to take care of themselves. Again, we are the richest country in the world. We are one of a very few industrialized countries that don't provide health care for their citizens. Now, think about if we had better health care right now. You wouldn't have to have free testing sites because they would already be covered, right? You wouldn't have people worried about going to work sick because you have people going to work with COVID probably because they need their money, right? So they're going anyway, whether they're asymptomatic or not. If we had better health care, everybody would be tested for COVID. We know we would have stopped the spread. We would have been able to do tracing because we would have been able to pull those people out of society. And guess what would have continued? The economy. We got a second wave coming before we even done with the first wave. And we're probably going to have to shut down again, especially in these southern hotspots, right?
Yep.
Most of the hotspots in the country are in the South and in Republican areas. Arizona, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. What do they all have in common? There you go. I don't know. The blue areas are wealthier, have better healthcare systems, and they are in decline while we're in a rise in numbers.
Got it.
So, we can pretend, we can keep making this political, or we can make this about saving people's lives. Now, Medicaid expansion is a state issue. States have a right to expand Medicaid. It's not an issue for the federal government. I'm running for a federal office. But if it was me, when I go to the polls in November, everybody who did not support Medicaid expansion would not get my vote. Because we're killing people by not accepting Medicaid expansion. I think I read an article and they in the state paper a while ago, and they were talking about how many people who've died because we refused to expand Medicaid. And you know what's happening now during COVID? They're thinking about opening some of these hospitals again because we're running out of hospital beds. Hospitals in my district, Marlboro Park was closed, no Medicaid expansion. And these rural towns that lost these hospitals because we refused to expand Medicare, right? So people have died because they couldn't get to a healthcare facility fast enough. And now we have people being turned away because there's not enough hospital beds because we have this rising COVID cases, which we knew. We knew this is what all the debate was back in January and February while the president was making fun of COVID-19 at a rally in North Charleston. Instead of saying, well, let's look at this, we are exactly where we knew where we would be because we have these expanding cases. 17 41, over 1,400 cases. We've had 6 or 7 straight days of over 1,000 new cases of COVID in South Carolina.
Absolutely. And the thing about where I want people to understand is that you know, I'm a faith-based guy. I pray. I
Mm-hmm.
use wisdom. I go with my mask when I got to, and if I don't, then I don't. To be honest, this is just me being honest with a lot of people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you have a pandemic, cure does not
Mm-hmm.
come. The cure does not come in a month,
Mm-hmm.
unless you got a inclination from
Mm-hmm.
God and God gave you the formula.
Mm-hmm.
Most pandemics take a while to actually for it to smooth on out, to be honest
Mm-hmm.
with you. And like if you want to think about pandemic, what you really do is you shut the whole thing down. You say everybody stay at home. If you want to be
Right.
honest. If you want to be honest,
Right.
it wants everybody, you would shut the whole thing down and smooth it on out. If you want to be technical, and let's be honest, if you really had a mask, it's really like a gas mask. Like the military graded mask is what you really would have on if it was like something that was really in the seriousness. Now, I'm not going against a medical doctor. I'm just saying like what you've been taught in the military. When you have a gas mask on, you are protecting yourself from anything that's going to hit the face, hit everything here. It's going to cover
Mm-hmm.
you, and it covers it. You have the canister there. You have that full body thing on
Yeah.
yourself to protect you. You're strapping everything down, doing everything possible so I don't get affected. So I
Right.
think that's what we are not understanding, that when we say like, hey, this thing is getting to out of the extreme, it just depends on how people
Mm-hmm.
taking you serious and how
Yep.
we're taking this stuff serious. Some people say like, hey, do you? Some people say like, hey, stay at the house. Some people say like, hey, go when you can. But it's a mixture of things. But people understand this. Unless you are financially stable, it's kind of hard to tell somebody that's got to put food on the table, pay
That's
the
right.
bills, do certain things, but there's no subsidization. No one's asking
Mm-hmm.
for a government handout. That's why
Right.
people understand. Like a real person who, like a lot of people who are speaking out, they're not asking for a government handout. If you're looking for a government handout, then hey, you go do that. What we're looking for is we're looking for change, because if you look at
Mm-hmm.
all the things that have really affected, if you go back in history, when you had the flu back in the early 1900s, that was a huge thing. There wasn't no cure within like a month or two. People
Mm-hmm.
died. That
That's
thing had
right.
to even on out. The flu, pneumonia, simple stuff. Like now, you're like, oh, you got pneumonia. Hey, take an injection, take these pills. Pneumonia. They didn't have no thing for that back during that team.
Mm-hmm.
Bronchitis. I mean, syphilis. I mean, there's so many different diseases that we've had throughout history that
Mm-hmm.
it did not take. It took a while, but like people didn't have the education to it. I think we have so many ways to make a difference now that we can, that we should make a difference. But just hearing your thoughts, some things we talked about. You said you're for unions. You want to make a difference in unions, so you want to see people get a fair shake. You said that you want to get the right to work here out of South Carolina put out of place. You want to create affordable health care here in South Carolina. Those are three things that I believe is very powerful, and people need to understand the importance of those things, because if you have unions, you can make a difference. South Carolina has some of the top companies in the nation, in the globe here. If you
Mm-hmm.
in Moncks Corner, we have Google. That's in Moncks Corner, South Carolina.
That's right.
We have Boeing. That's in North Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
In Greenville, you have Mercedes. You have that there. If you go into
You have
by
Mercedes here. You have
Mercedes here,
BMW.
BMW,
Yeah.
in Jetberg, you have Volvo. The new plant
Oh,
for
yeah.
Volvo came down. You think about the call centers from Verizon Wireless in South Carolina, T-Mobile, the number one, the largest call center in South Carolina is here in for T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
That's in North Charleston. So you think about all these things that are here, and we should be making a difference. We should be paving the way. So the right to work should be totally taken off the docket, due to the fact is you want to be able to say have people for their merits. If they ain't doing their job right, I understand that. But you saying like, I don't like you today, I'm gonna let you go. That's totally wrong. Should never be done. But how can people get in contact with you? How can people help you with your movement?
I am, look for me at melissawatsonforcongress.com. You want to send me an email, shoot me an email at info@melissawatson.com. Melissa Watson for Congress, .com. And we're around, so I'd love to hear from everybody. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter at Melissa Watson for Congress. All of those, it's all Melissa Watson for Congress. So we're going to win this thing in the Congressional District 7. I do want to leave people with some parting thoughts here. You know, I know we've never won. Okay, I hear it all the time. We've never won. It's such a red district. I just got off the phone earlier this morning with my field team, and we were talking about how are we going to win? And I know people think it's impossible, right? I look at the numbers every morning. First thing I get up, I look at the numbers. I look at the district. I look at all the races from 2012 to 2018. I almost got it memorized, right? Guys, we can win. We can win. And it's a simple thing. Just go vote. Just show up in November and vote for Melissa Watson for Congress. That's all you've got to do. And I, it's don't fall for the boogeyman, right? Oh my gosh, she's pro-union. It's going to bankrupt our businesses. In Horry County, you have mom and pops. It's tourists based, right? You don't have a Boeing. You don't have an Amazon. You're okay. But is the current congressman taking care of your small business right now in COVID-19? Because I can guarantee you he's not. If you looked at how that PPP was rolled out, right? In 13 days, the money was gone. And you know who got the money? The Lakers, Ruth Chris, all of these large corporations, Kia Homeowners Association, but the Pancake House in Myrtle Beach, no PPP money. Planet Hollywood, they may have gotten some corporate money. The little NASCAR park, I don't think so. So your small business, you're not being taken care of. Don't fall for the rhetoric, okay? We can win. We can win this, and we can put protections in to help average people. We can fix healthcare. We can improve our roads and flooding, which we did not get to talk about on this program, but it's a huge issue in our district. The drainage, the PD River overflowing all the time when it rains. I can't help but stop like every day and look at the PD River. I mean, every freaking day I'm looking at this river, taking pictures of this river, because once you see it overflow and you watch this river, it is mesmerizing to see how this peaceful river can go from peaceful to overflowing in a matter of two days or overnight. So flooding, infrastructure, we can fix those things. We can improve education in the PD, and throughout the whole district, but especially the PD, where there's no broadband. That Congressman Clyburn right now is constantly fighting for rural broadband. And they, again, the first thing when we ask for anything, they say, oh, it's going to cost $700 trillion. They make up numbers to scare us, right? It's not going to cost. I think in the paper on some Republican side, I saw it was going to cost like $600 billion for rural broadband. I'm like, it is not going to cost. But they do that to say, oh, we can't afford that. But they didn't have a problem passing $2 trillion worth of COVID relief in 2 months, and they're going to do it again. That was, we spent $3 trillion in 30 days on COVID relief for big business. That wasn't even a big deal. Oh, it was good for the economy.
You're speaking
but we
the
won't
truth.
spend $1 billion for broadband so these kids can learn online in a pandemic, right? We won't spend $5 billion to provide universal community college for Americans, but we can spend $3 trillion to help big business, right? Let's have some real conversations based on issues. And let's go win this thing in Congressional District 7. So Thank you
Amen.
for having me today, Calvin.
No problem. And like for those that want to know what she's meaning is truth. Um, I work for the wireless industry. I worked for a long time. I've done communication with the military. If you had broadband service in the rural areas, two things would happen. One, you got to understand this too. With this COVID-19, these past 3 months from March to June, there are still kids that have not been accountable for their work. There are
Hmm.
still things where you can have an iPad, but if it ain't got no internet on it, it ain't gonna work. You got parents who
Yeah.
are using their cell phones as mobile hotspot devices, thinking that's going to be the answer to getting it done, but it's not. Technology is not designed. See, your cell phone not designed to
Hmm.
actually get to your entire home. It's not built that way. That's a lie.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
think that mobile hotspot is going to be the answer for all these things you got going on in your house, it's not going to work. You're going to have a lot of latency speeds. You're going to have a lot of problems. But if you had high speed internet, not dial, not dish, not satellite. Satellite is not
Hmm.
good because it's going by sight. But if you had high speed broadband fiber optics under the ground and you put into these rural areas, like the money that we spent on the 3 trillion, we could have been covered the whole entire United States with broadband. That's those are numbers. Don't let
Hmm.
nobody fool you. If you put the numbers together and you ask how much it would cost to put full broadband in rural areas to have the same things in
Hmm.
big cities, I promise you it's less than $3 trillion. Probably even less than that. But they're not going to tell you that. The benefit is that if you brought that into place, it would create competition. Means the
Hmm.
price gouging wouldn't be in effect. What do you mean what I'm talking about, Calvin? Price gouging. What that is that if you're the only suitor in the rural area, that means if you want my internet, I'm gonna charge you high dollar.
That's
Most
right.
people can't afford that, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna gouge you from what the real price is. But
Hmm.
if you brought all the players in place, what that does, it knocks off the one who's been gouging the community for decades, and it
Hmm.
puts you in a place that people are on the same page. And by having this broadband service, I mean, you can call it the Broadband Act, is what I would call it. And by putting the Broadband Act in South Carolina rural areas, what you can do, you can construct the numbers. By you putting in place, you can have the spectrums, the Xfinities, the AT&T Uverse to be put in those places, and now the competition will come into play. Because remember, keep in mind, Dish is nice, Direct TV is nice, all these other its satellite is nice, but it goes by line of sight. So if you got a thunderstorm, a hurricane, those type of things, it
Hmm.
gets knocked off. But if you call it the Broadband Act, I promise people, if we create what's called a Broadband Act and we put it in place and we connect these things together and we tell these other companies, like, hey, we'll give you certain tax breaks. It's real easy. Like, hey, you give me, I give you. We do it all the time. If we do
Hmm.
that, then we make a difference. You do it all the time with cell phones. What do you think with rural cell phones? You think you're not doing what's called rural communications? There's a bill for that. There's a
Hmm.
rural communications that each top carrier has to give, um, to be able people they can roam without no extra cost. Back in the day, there used to be an extra cost. That bill got passed to where you're not going to be charged for roaming in a
Hmm.
rural area. But so if you do that same modification for broadband service and now show the importance of showing, like, because of this our education has been backwards, I believe that we can make a difference. So I've claimed that either yourself or somebody calls called the Broadband Act. If we have the Broadband Act, we create something like that, I believe we can make a difference where we can pretty much, you're saying, put these particular things in place so that we prepare ourselves for the fall of 2020. So if the schools
That's right.
close down, the parents have an opportunity to say, hey, I can teach my kids. Along with that, create the Wi-Fi buses where you can have at least about 4 to 8 hour increments where you put in the communities, where even for parents who cannot afford it, to put into
Hmm.
place and say, like, hey, you can stay in your car. We'll make this broadband service to be outside, create a
Hmm.
password for it. Means that, hey, not everybody can get on it unless you know the password. You come on the bus, and we can
That's
create a
right.
bill in that as well. So there's the two things that I believe we can do that as a nation to help out those who are less fortunate. That's just
Yeah.
something to put in place.
Well, I'm. Congressman Clyburn has a really good broadband bill right now, and I'm hoping they'll pass it. And then, you know, by the time I get there in January, we can push this bill, because this bill is going to pass. I believe they're going to go ahead and pass. I'm believing they're going to go ahead and pass this bill, and then we can move forward. But I find it interesting that Google, you brought up Google, and then we can go. Google creates hotspots all the time in their communities. You know why? Because it boosts their business. So, you know, if you're ever out in California and you're touring the Google campus, like I did a couple of years ago with my kids, you know, Google provides free, wireless hotspots all over the San Francisco area. And they do it in some parts of Goose Creek where they, and they provide the Chromebooks. So if Google can do it, why can't the United States of America? And again, it goes back to what we choose to do. So if you're done, Calvin, because I know you've got another cup, I know you've got 3 more of these today, I will let you go.
No, we
I don't
we
want to.
we just appreciate you again. Definitely love to have you come back to talk about more what's going on. We pray that it does work out for you. We're not telling everybody who to vote for. I know who I'm gonna vote for if she was in my area. But I'm telling you right now, I've always said this: check her record, check what she believes in, and that's what you stand for. So hey, on November the 3rd, you know who to vote for. Make a decision. You know what you'd have. We have Melissa Watts live at the Logan Power Show. Hey, we love y'all. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon.
That's right. Thank you, and I will be back. Thank you, Calvin.
Yes, ma'am. So how'd you like it?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to my people all the time. You know, just because the more educated we are, the better we do. You know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.